Am I the asshole for asking my future father-in-law to walk me down the aisle after my dad backed out 3 days before my wedding without telling my dad what I'd arranged?
Welcome to Book 'em Before this story. Today's story is so emotional. Imagine your dad backed out of walking you down the aisle 3 days before your wedding to flee your toxic sister. So she seriously asked her food to father-in-law instead without telling her dad. Let's listen.
3 days before my wedding, my dad called to tell me he wouldn't be walking me down the aisle. He didn't say it like he was sorry. He said it like he was reading something out loud that someone else had written. He said my sister was going through a difficult time with her marriage and that seeing him walk me down the aisle would be painful for her. He said he hoped I understood. He said family was complicated and he was trying to keep the peace. I said, okay. I hung up. And then I sat on my kitchen floor for about 20 minutes before I figured out what I was going to do. Growing up, my sister was the one people talked about. She's a lawyer. She has the kind of resume that gets framed. She was the reason my parents went to every event, called every weekend, flew across the country for every milestone. I'm a garden designer. I specialize in therapeutic landscapes, spaces in hospitals and care facilities where people can go to breathe and heal. I've been doing this work for 6 years, and I love it deeply, and my mom has referred to it as my little plant hobby for most of that time. Just my dad is not a cruel man. He loves me in the way some people love things they're afraid to defend out loud. He would show up quietly, drive me to the airport, fix things around my apartment, call on birthdays without being reminded. But whenever my mom or my sister needed something, he folded. Every time. He called it keeping the peace. I called it something else, but I was never brave enough to say it directly. I found out later what had actually happened. My sister's marriage had been falling apart for months. Her husband had already told her he was done. She was not hurting at the idea of watching a wedding. She was furious that the world was going to keep moving while her life was unraveling. And she had told my parents that if my dad walked me down the aisle, she would not bring her kids to Christmas. She used her children as leverage against a wedding ceremony. My dad chose the grandkids. I called my father-in-law that evening. He is a carpenter. He has large, quiet hands, and he doesn't talk much, but when he does, he means it. In the years I had known him, he had built me a set of bookshelves without being asked, fixed a gate at my community garden plot, and once spent an entire Saturday afternoon repotting some plants. I've been neglecting because he had noticed they were struggling and thought I might be too busy to get to them. He had never made a big thing of any of it. He just did it. I told him what had happened. I asked if he would walk me down the aisle. He didn't hesitate. He didn't make a speech. He just said, "When do you need me?" I told him I needed him at 11 a.m. on Saturday. He said he'd be there. I did not tell my dad. I thought about it. I went back and forth on it for 2 days. Part of me thought he deserved to know that the surprise of it would be humiliating, and I didn't want to humiliate him. Part of me thought about the phone call where he read me the decision like a memo and said he hoped I understood. I didn't call him. The wedding is tomorrow, so am I the asshole for not warning my dad? Did I handle this wrong? I want honest answers because I've been living inside this situation for 3 days and I can't see it clearly anymore. Too long. Didn't read. Dad called 3 days before my wedding to say he wasn't walking me down the aisle because my sister, who was going through a divorce, would find it painful. She had threatened to withhold his grandchildren at Christmas if he did it. I asked my father-in-law instead. Dad doesn't know. Am I the asshole? I keep seeing people ask if my husband knew about any of this. He knew about my dad pulling out. He didn't know I'd asked his dad until his dad told him the night before the wedding. He cried a little, which he would hate me for mentioning, but it's the truth that at it too. It's midnight before my wedding and I should be asleep and I'm reading Reddit comments. Going to put the phone down now. We'll update after.
I am literally crying right now. How could a father do that to his own daughters? He literally chose keeping the peace over his own trial's wedding day because the sister threatened to with on the train keys at treatment. The absolute manipulation. But Tori didn't sit there and cry. She called her future father-in-law a quiet, amazing carpenter, and he didn't even hesitate. He just asked, "When do you need me?" Oh, my heart. But here's the crazy part. Tori didn't tell the dad what's in their end. The wedding is tomorrow, and the dad thinks he's just going to sit in the back. Truckable coin guys because others one is a total tear changer.
Update 1. 2 days after the wedding, you want to write this down properly. The ceremony was in a small church. Maybe 80 people. My dad, my mom, and my sister arrived together and were seated near the back. I know this because one of my bridesmaids texted me while I was getting ready. I didn't respond. I just kept getting ready. When the doors opened, I was standing in the entrance with my father-in-law. He was wearing a jacket I'd never seen before, dark gray, clearly new. He had a small white flower in the lapel that matched my bouquet. I don't know who had organized that. I didn't ask as he offered me his arm. I took it. The room shifted when we walked in. I felt it more than I saw it. A kind of collective intake of breath, people leaning toward each other, a few whispers. I looked straight ahead as my husband was at the altar, and when he saw his dad walking beside me, his face did something I don't have a word for. Not surprised exactly. Something softer than that, the minister asked who gives this woman in marriage that my father-in-law said, her family. All of us who are here. Nobody laughed. Nobody said anything. The minister nodded and continued. I don't know what my dad's face looked like during that. I was not looking at him right after the ceremony. There was a reception. I saw my dad moving toward me at one point, working his way through the crowd, and I think he had something he wanted to say. My mom appeared beside him before he reached me, touched his arm, said something I couldn't hear, and steered him in a different direction. He looked back once. I didn't follow as my father-in-law danced with me at the reception during a song I hadn't planned as a father-daughter dance. It just happened. Someone played something slow, and he held out his hand, and I took it. He said, "You look beautiful walking in." Then he didn't say anything else for the whole song, which was exactly right. My sister left early. I don't know if she said goodbye to anyone. I'm home now. There's a voicemail from my dad I haven't listened to yet.
Oh my gosh, I have literal goosebumps. When the minister asked who gives the woman away, the father-in-law said, her family, all of us who are here. Yes, that's were the most beautiful thing ever. The desk was stuck in the back room watching another man take his place, and a toxic assistant left early. Talk about a wild but powerful reality check. But the drama is not over yet. Tori just got home, and there is a handwritten 3-page letter from her dad waiting for her, plus a voicemail from her sister, who's married, just officially added. Let's get to the final act then to see what happens next.
Update 2. Finn and me dad sent a letter, not a text. An actual letter, handwritten, 3 pages. It arrived about 10 days after the wedding. He wrote that he had stood in the back of that church and watched another man walk his daughter down the aisle and that he deserved exactly that. He wrote that he had spent years choosing the path of least resistance and telling himself it was for the good of the family when really it was just easier for him. He wrote that he didn't expect me to forgive him and he wasn't asking me to. He just wanted me to know that he knew. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer. I haven't responded yet. I'm not ready. But I'm not throwing it away either that my sister called about 3 weeks after the wedding. Her husband had left. Officially, finally done. She called in the middle of the day on a Tuesday and I saw her name on my screen and I let it ring out. She called again an hour later and I let that ring out too. She left a voicemail that I listened to once. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because things were hard and she needed someone to talk to. I haven't called her back yet. I don't know if I will. That's still something I'm sitting with. I have been working on a therapeutic garden project for a regional hospital. It's a courtyard space for patients in the oncology ward. Somewhere they can go outside and sit with plants and light and the specific kind of quiet that only exists in a garden. I've been working on this project for 8 months, and it is the best work I have ever done. That my mom once told me that. Gardening wasn't a real job, I thought. About that recently while reviewing the final planting plan. Then I stopped thinking about it because I had work to do since my father-in-law came to see the site last week. I showed him around the space, explained what would go where and why. He asked good questions. On the way out, he stopped by a section of raised beds and said, "Your grandchildren are going to play here someday." He said it matter-of-factly, the way he says everything, like it was just a thing that was going to happen. I don't know exactly what my family looks like going forward. I don't have a clean answer to that. I'm taking it slowly. What I know is that on the most important morning of my life, someone held out his arm without hesitation and walked beside me when I needed him too. That's the thing about real family. They don't ask you to explain why you need them. They just ask when, not the asshole. But I think the more important thing I learned is that the question of who shows up for you has already been answering itself for years. You just have to be willing to see it after long. Didn't read. Dad sent a 3-page handwritten letter admitting he knew he had failed. Sister called after her husband left. I didn't answer. My father-in-law visited my hospital garden project and said my grandchildren would play there someday. Haven't responded to my dad's letter yet. Not ready. Haven't called my sister back. Not sure I will. Doing the best work of my life. Okay.
Well, what a heartbreaking ending. Real family doesn't ask you to explain why you miss them, but just ask when. I am literally weeping right now. That's was so profound. I am so really proud of Tori. Her mom called her Teraplet Explainscape Work a little blind hobby. But she is out there being healing gardens for cancer patients. And the father-in-law visiting the side and saying, your grandchildren are going to play it here someday. That's a poor, unconditional love right there. The bio dad finally admitted in his letter that he was a coward who always chose the path of least resistance. It's rain that he realized it, but Tori is 100% right to take her time. And the sister calling because she needs someone to talk to now that her husband left. Grr, karma comes around fast. Tori let it ring out. And I am totally here for that. But Popcornrest, I have to ask you, would you have forgiven the dad after reading that handwritten letter? Or would you have kept him out of your life for good? And how amazing is that father-in-law? Drop your thought in the comments. I need to read your takes. And if this story touched your soul, smash this like button and subscribe to Popcornrest this story. Strive your work part, appreciate the ones whose stories so are for you. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.